you are someone who is able to access enough food to be obese or morbidly obese, you have privilege. I know.
Oh, oh my god. Hot take.
Hey, welcome or welcome back. My name is Nadia, and today we are going to talk about crazy fat acceptance TikTok drama. So I saw this video that a girl put up on TikTok that she called a hot take. I disagree. I didn't see it as a hot take, but she was right. TikTok responded to it like she was absolutely insane. I saw multiple people saying, "This cannot be real," which is how I felt about the response to the video.
Oh,
that might be some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
is this a joke?
This is the hot take that they're reacting to.
I have a hot take for you. If you are someone who is able to access enough food to be obese or morbidly obese, you have privilege.
This is basically the most offensive thing she could say about a group of people who want to be identified by their victim status.
I know, that's probably a tough concept to understand, but you have privilege, especially over people that can't even afford food.
I'm gonna push back and say that it should not be a tough thing to understand that if you are able to afford food, you have more privilege than someone who cannot afford food.
Okay? If you have the ability to eat in excess of your normal caloric intake to the point where you're able to maintain an extremely high body weight, you have a lot of privilege to be able to do that compared to people that literally cannot eat.
People are basically going to completely ignore the starving people that she keeps referencing here. It's like they don't want you to worry about the hungry people until you've first worried about whether you're being fat phobic or not. People are starving.
I'm not saying this to be mean. I just think that it's important that we get a little perspective on where we're at and actually how put down we are by society, because I don't think a lot of people who are overweight, like myself, think about the fact that we have a lot of privilege to be able to even be overweight. That's not a bad thing. It just is. I'm not saying this to offend anyone. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of perspective.
I'm not saying this to be mean is something that shouldn't have to be said here. She's not being mean. If someone said, hey, people who live in trailers are more advantaged or privileged than people who are homeless, is that mean? I grew up poor. I lived in a trailer park. I didn't like living in a trailer park. But if someone approached me and said, hey, you're more privileged than being homeless, there would be no argument from me. But people got really mad about this.
If you are someone who is able to access enough food to be obese or morbidly obese, you have privilege. I know.
Oh, oh my god. Hot take.
I actually thought that girl was making fun of the way people were responding to this, but no, that was just her real response. That original video got so much backlash. She's got almost 10,000 comments on it. Most of them are not good. I'll read some of them in a few minutes. One of the main objections that people made over and over was how expensive it is to eat healthy.
Is this a joke? Have you ever been bigger than what you are? I have been 400 pounds. I've lost almost 200.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for her.
Okay. Let me let you in on a little secret. Okay? I've had a harder time eating healthy than anything. I cannot afford to eat and be skinny. Unless I starve myself. Because it costs $5 to get a meal at McDonald's. It's a double cheeseburger, okay? Fries, a 4-piece nugget, and a drink.
That is not a meal. That's almost 1,200 calories. And I think that's one of the bigger issues here that nobody wants to talk about. A lot of people don't understand what a normal portion is, so they think that they're not eating a lot. And ultra-processed foods actually make this worse because of how they're made. Take something like a Cheeto. It basically crunches and then melts on your tongue. We call this vanishing caloric density, and essentially the food can trick your brain into thinking that you're not eating as much as you actually are.
I'm not sure what planet you live on, or who birthed you, or what school district you grew up in, but that has got to be one of the most things I've heard on the internet yet. So, more than likely, if you're poor, you're obese. Okay? And poor people get food stamps, so they can eat whatever the hell they want to eat.
I can't tell if she's saying that because you have the benefits that you can afford to eat whatever you want to eat, or if she's saying that you get to eat whatever you want to eat because you're already dealing with enough. So if someone could enlighten me, I would appreciate that.
Privilege? If you're obese, you're privileged?
I've said before that I think it's beneficial to acknowledge the advantages and disadvantages we have in our lives, but the obsession with privilege on TikTok is rotting people's brains, it seems like.
Because thin privilege is real.
The other day on one of my walks, I heard a little girl, and she was being totally serious. She was talking to her dad about how butterflies have pretty privilege over other insects and how that's not fair.
We're doomed.
If you were someone,
You were so close, but you're completely wrong. Sorry, not sorry, but no. We can't afford us making less than $15,000 a year. We cannot afford these fresh fruits that cost $10 at a time for one or two fruits.
Whoever is selling her fruit is ripping her off.
I mean, it's one banana. What could it cost? $10?
So yeah, we're going to be eating food that's a little bit more processed because we can't afford that expensive fresh. Also, at the same time, people are on medication that makes them bigger and fatter.
Medication is definitely another one that I saw repeated in response to this TikTok. And what I noticed when you zoomed out and sort of looked at all of the responses as a whole, there was a lack of consistency. Unsurprisingly, it seemed like the only thing everybody agreed on was that she was wrong, but then those reasons started to clash with each other.
Basically, this girl's whole entire video was just saying, well, if you can afford to eat so much that you're gonna be obese, then that means that you're privileged, because a lot of people can't afford to eat food and a lot of people are starving.
And yet you notice how nobody has addressed that very important part of what she said. She didn't say you're privileged over thin people. She just said you're privileged over people who can't even afford to eat, which makes all of this outrage that much more absurd.
And you know what's so funny about that is number 1, genetics, number 2, food deserts, number 3, cost of groceries versus cost of fast food ties back into food deserts. So let's talk about some numbers.
Even in the context of food deserts, there are about 19 million Americans affected by them. Meanwhile, there are approximately 110 million adults in the United States who are affected by obesity. Just adults.
So I'm going to show you 2 maps. This is the first map. This is a food desert map, okay? So no car and no supermarket store within a mile.
Food deserts in urban areas are defined by not having a grocery store or supermarket within 1 mile of your residence. That's not a long way, just for the record. And in rural areas, I believe that is 10 miles.
So as you can see, like up here, like California, Colorado, Utah, Washington, these areas, not really a thing, but then you get down to the south and it's very, very red. It's mainly food deserts, okay?
That's just not accurate. There are a lot of food deserts on that map in the southeast, but it is not majoritively food deserts in the southeast.
And now, this is a map showing obesity from 2019 to 2021 in America. Oh, do we see a correlation?
To steal their favorite tagline, correlation is not causation.
That in the United States, obesity is heavily linked to poverty, right? Like, we have been known this. This is common knowledge, I fear.
Do you see the correlation? Do you see how it's not, oh, you're privileged because you just eat fast food all the time? Do you see that? Do I have to like make it any more clear for you?
This does not mean what she thinks it means. And that's part of why correlation is not causation is an important principle.
It's almost like when people don't have access to organic health food grocery stores and an abundance of choices of supermarkets where there's places where there's no Sprouts and no Whole Foods and
Nobody needs an organic health food mart to be healthy. You can eat healthy at the dollar store. I know from personal experience.
no anything like that, and it's mainly just fast food like KFC and maybe a McDonald's and a Taco Bell, and that's mainly what's in their tiny little town. It's almost like that makes obesity rates higher, and it's almost like that doesn't mean they're privileged. It means that that's the only food they have access to because they live in a food desert.
I have lived in poor neighborhoods. I've bought vegetables from gas stations before because in these areas, there are community efforts to combat the crap food, to combat the lack of access, because we don't want to eat that crap. We want to eat better. We have community gardens. We have little free pantries, sorry. And I can tell that she, like most people in this video, think that they're doing a nice thing. They think they're defending a marginalized population, but ultimately they don't have a good grasp on what they're talking about. Her comment section looked like, "This is wildly ignorant, babe. The lights are on, but nobody's home. I have found 4 Walmarts in low-income areas that quite literally don't sell vegetables, LOL. Sorry, but that's a lie. You neither understand privilege or obesity enough to speak on this." People clearly just had an emotional response to what she said. One of the strangest ones I saw was this one.
I have a hot take for you.
Your video causes obesity.
What?
Social anxiety occurs from social ostracization of people not meeting a certain standard. It goes down a slippery slope, and you're just like throwing some oil on there. That's how slippery the slope is, and you're trying to put out fires with gasoline, eh? You're one of the reasons for obesity.
So that had nothing to do with anything in the original video.
I have a hot take for you. If you were
So tell me you don't have any fat friends without telling me you don't have any fat friends.
What does that have to do with anything?
My name's Kayla, licensed counselor, certified intuitive eating counselor, and fat liberation activist. This take is so stupid for so many reasons, and I could literally eviscerate the argument from a bunch of different standpoints. But what I'll do today is just talk about the fact that if you are not a part of a marginalized group, do not make sweeping generalizations over the marginalized group.
So she could take this argument down from a number of legitimate angles, but instead she's just gonna use a logical fallacy.
Because it just showcases that you don't know any fat people. If your assumption is that fat people are gorging themselves into oblivion, your only evidence is probably that you've been watching too much My 600-Pound Life, because
Nobody said anything about gorging yourself. All she said is if you have access to more calories than you need. Being in a caloric surplus doesn't have to look crazy and cartoonish like it does on My 600-Pound Life. But those people aren't just a little bit overweight or obese even. They are morbidly obese.
that's not what body diversity is. Body diversity has always existed. And the fact that you're a white woman, or at least a presenting white woman doing this, is extremely problematic, because your body, it reflects Eurocentric beauty standards, which means your body is extremely privileged compared to other more curvature, or other cultures who have more curvature in their bodies.
So her argument is, no, you're privileged.
Lucky.
Who are being demonized for not being thin. So just check that. Maybe read some books about anti-blackness and anti-fatness, and find some fat friends. That's all I got for you. Have a good day.
Not to be mean myself, but that was a whole lot of nothing. Disappointingly so, since she started off by saying she could eviscerate this argument.
you have privilege.
That might be some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That's certainly a hot take, and you're also completely wrong. So she goes on to explain how if you can find enough food to manage to make yourself obese or morbidly obese, you're actually really, really privileged, and you need to recognize how much privilege you have over other people.
Seems like she just wanted to give some people something to think about. Some people who complain loud and often. And the direct comparison she made was to people who can't even access the calories that they need to survive. And somehow that's controversial.
So first things first, we know that the main cause of anybody's weight is genetics. Genetics plays an insanely important part in what your weight is going to be.
No, we don't know this. Fat acceptance likes to say this, but this is not some understood fact. And there's no genetic expression that can create energy from nothing. If someone like that existed, it would be a miracle and we would study them.
Secondly, I love how she completely ignores the fact that food that is not great for you is significantly cheaper than like healthy food and can usually feed a family for longer. So if your options are eating McDonald's or not eating anything, you're going to get a burger.
Yeah, but those aren't the only two options. And if she really believed what she said about genetics, then why would it matter how much any food costs?
Secondly, she makes zero mention of food deserts, where there are literally no options for fresh ingredients within a certain mile radius and only processed food available. What does privilege mean to you for you to say this?
We could flip that question right back around and ask, what does privilege mean to you? Because apparently being born in a part of the world where poverty doesn't mean you're going to starve is not a privilege.
No one has suffered like I have suffered.
If you can't see the screen, this lady is just making faces like she's trying to talk, but she's so mad she can't.
It's about what they put into the food, not the quantity of what we're eating.
This situation really reminds me of the mom that fed her kids donuts for breakfast. So many people have come out to say how bad ultra-processed foods are. The similarity I see is there were a mountain of people who came out to say there's not really a big difference in powdered donuts and frosted flakes for breakfast. Okay, so you have the understanding. Why not make a different choice? But people are acting like there's just no choice.
Processed food is cheaper.
I know a lot of people already know this, but processed food and ultra-processed foods are not the same thing. Processed is not nearly as bad. Something like freezing or canning foods is processing.
If my privilege is being fat because I'm a broke-ass bitch and have to buy terrible shit, we need to be looking at the government because they allow additives and all kinds of bullshit into our food supply that keeps us unhealthy.
Nobody has to buy those products. I am not trying to be obtuse. I do understand that she is saying that those food products are oftentimes the most financially accessible. Or maybe it seems that way. But again, coming from someone who has spent most of their life poor, just being real, these are not the only foods that you can buy and sustain yourself on. There are entire YouTube channels, probably on TikTok too, dedicated to eating well on a budget. There are lots of great ideas. If you have any, please drop them down below. Beans and rice is one of my favorite meals. It's super cheap and it can taste really good if you cook it right. Anyways, let me know if there's something I missed here. I think the way people dogpiled on this girl was absolutely insane, but maybe there's something I haven't considered. And actually, the creator of that original TikTok video commented on my last video, so she might be down somewhere in the comments under this one. Anyways, we are going to call it here. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end with me. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I will see you all in the next one. Please take care until then.